as senseless, saying the provincial government will spare no effort to ensure safer communities. Mabuyane also called on the police to be diligent in the search for the killers.
A mass murder which shook the community of KwaNobuhle. The victims, aged between 25 and 35, died in a hail of bullets.
3 unknown men entered this premises and they opened fire on people that were in the premises as well as in the immediate surrounding. 6 people were shot dead, 4 were injured. Of the 6 that were shot dead, 5 were males and 1 was a female. And with the injured, there were 3 males and 1 female that was also injured.
This is the 3rd mass shooting in Nelson Mandela Bay this year. In January, 8 people were killed in KwaZakhele during a birthday party. The following month, another 4 people were killed in a house in KwaZakhele. Last year alone, a total of 8 people were killed in 2 separate incidents in KwaNobuhle.
And as much as we are recovering illegal firearms, there are still thousands of firearms that are still out there. So the illegal firearms is definitely a problem, and we also urge the communities to report anything that is suspicious within their neighborhoods. This is a drug den, and people know what is going on, and sometimes we need them to be the eyes and ears of the police because we cannot be everywhere.
Police suspect the motive of the incident is drug-related. Police are investigating 6 counts of murder and 4 counts of attempted murder. No one has been arrested yet, but the hunt for the suspects continues. SABC News in Karecha.
We may come from different communities, speak different languages, chase different dreams, but we are all connected. Our banknotes and coins celebrate this connection as we bond as families, support our communities, and boost the economy. The South African Reserve Bank has added new designs celebrating our heritage and upgraded the security features. Your trusted rands with the latest designs or the older ones are worth the same. So go on, use both with confidence. Our money, our pride. The SA Reserve Bank, connecting us. To learn more, download the Swap Currency app or visit our website at resbank.co.za.
Well, let's quickly go to the Constitutional Court judgment in relation to the public protector judgment that was handed down by the Western Cape High Court. Justice Meyer is currently handing down that judgment.
The public protector that he would act personally and did not consider himself disqualified from doing so. Aggrieved, the public protector on 1 April 2022 approached the High Court for relief in terms of Section 172, subsection 1 of the Constitution. She launched the application in Parts A and B. In Part A, she sought urgent interdictory relief against the Section 194 Committee, the Speaker, and the President. Part A is, however, not the subject of these proceedings. Part B is, and in it, she sought orders declaring the conduct of the Speaker in writing the letter to the President, the conduct of the President in writing the letter initiating the suspension process, and the conduct of the Section 194 Committee in proceeding with the Section 194 inquiry, irrational, unconstitutional, and invalid. On 6 May 2022, this court dismissed the public protector's application to rescind the Speaker judgment. On 10 May 2022, the public protector launched another rescission application in this court, this time in order to have the order of 6 May 2022 refusing rescission rescinded. On 26 May 2022, Sianaho attorneys addressed a letter to the President setting out the public protector's representations as to why she should not be suspended. On 1 June 2022, while Part A of the High Court matter was still pending, a former senior investigating officer and Deputy Director General of Home Affairs, Mr. Arthur Fraser, laid criminal charges against the President in relation to grave allegations of criminal misconduct involving foreign currency allegedly stolen at the president's Phala farm. On 3 June 2022, the Office of the Public Protector received a complaint against the president from the president of the African Transformation Movement, Mr. Vuyo Zungula, requesting an investigation into any part which the president might have played in the commission of the alleged crimes, specifically breaches of the Executive Members Ethics Act 82 of 1998 or the President's Oath of Office. On 7 June 2022, the Public Protector wrote a letter to the President instructing him to answer 31 questions in relation to an investigation she would conduct into the Phala incident. The letter required the president to provide answers to the questions within 14 days. On 8 June 2022, the Public Protector publicly announced her intention to launch an investigation into the Phala incident in terms of the law. The president submitted his reply to these questions on 22 July 2022. In the meantime, on 9 June 2022, the president suspended the Public Protector in terms of Section 22A, sub 7 of the Public Protector Act 23 of 1994, and the Deputy Public Protector took over the functions of the Office of the Public Protector. On the next day, the High Court dismissed Part A of the Public Protector's application. As a result of the President's decision to suspend her, the Public Protector filed a notice to amend the Part B application. She now sought an order declaring the decision to suspend her irrational, unconstitutional, and invalid. She also sought an order declaring all the decisions taken by the Section 194 Committee from 2 February 2022 null and void. Lastly, she sought an order declaring the implementation of the old version of Rule 129 AD sub 3 by the Section 194 Committee without its amendment by the National Assembly in accordance with this court's judgment in Speaker unconstitutional. The High Court granted the amendment, which was unopposed. The High Court, however, rejected the Public Protector's argument. It endorsed the Speaker's reliance on Section 41(1)H, Roman numeral 2 of the Constitution, and held that the proceedings envisaged in Section 194 of the Constitution are a matter of common interest between the legislature and the executive. The High Court reasoned that the Speaker, as a representative and leader of the National Assembly, is obliged to inform the President when the Section 194 proceedings begins proceedings, and was, in this case, obliged to inform the President of the decision of the Section 194 Committee to resume its proceedings in line with what the previous Speaker did in similar circumstances. And the High Court held that by resuming the Section 194 inquiry, the committee did not infringe the sub judice rule or Rule 89 of the National Assembly rules as condemned by the Public Protector. In its view, the Section 194 Committee would not be reflecting on the substantive strengths and weaknesses of the Public Protector's rescission application or the challenge to the constitutionality of the rules. Instead, the committee would be considering whether the Public Protector committed misconduct or is incompetent for any of the reasons alleged in the motion for her removal. The court reiterated that the sub judice rule does not preclude members of the National Assembly from carrying out their oversight functions and holding Chapter 9 institutions accountable. In respect of the President's decision to suspend the Public Protector, the High Court considered the line of events leading up to the suspension of the Public Protector, and that on 9 June 2022, the President suspended the Public Protector 2 days after she informed him that she was investigating him in respect of the Phala incident. According to the court, this constituted objective facts that found a basis to form a reasonable perception that the Public Protector's suspension was triggered by her decision to investigate the president. The High Court found no other plausible explanation for what it viewed as a premature suspension of the public protector. On 9 September 2022, the High Court declared the president's decision to suspend the public protector invalid, set aside the suspension effective from the date of his order, and ordered each party to pay its own costs. The public protector then unsuccessfully approached the full court in terms of Section 18 of the Superior Courts Act to render the judgment of the High Court operational and executable, pending any application for leave to appeal.
It's a privilege to take this opportunity to officially open this BRICS colloquium, which will be followed by the presidential gala dinner this evening. As the Progressive Business Forum, we found it necessary to create this platform for networking and engagement of government, business, knowledge institutions, and other stakeholders ahead of two related significant events. Firstly, later this month, actually from the 18th to the 20th July 2023, here in this city, there will be a BRICS Plus political party dialogue, which is essentially a forum of the governing political parties and other fraternal organizations meeting together to reflect on the mandates they have from their peoples and how they can enhance the BRICS platform as an institution to give back to the people that have elected to represent them. The African National Congress will be the host, and as many as political parties in our country, in our continent, and globally have been invited to chart this progressive path towards a better world. Later, which is next month, there will be a second event, which is a government or governments-led BRICS Plus Summit. This BRICS Plus Africa Summit will also be consolidating what comes from the various processes that you'll hear about, both here in the podium, but also in the various panels, discussions, to look at really how far the BRICS Plus Africa platform has gone. And for us as South Africa being the chair, it would be important as well to locate the work that has been done with how Africa and South Africa in particular have advanced since we hosted in the BRICS Plus Summit in 2018. I can assure you that the deliberations of today will be taken seriously, and we will be able to collate these and process them through particularly these two platforms. We are aware that there are other platforms that are being used. The NYDA, for instance, has been engaging young people on the aspirations of youth, and a number of universities have also been mobilizing society to really reflect on these major developments on a global scale. BRICS is a partnership, just to remind ourselves, of 5 leading emerging markets and developing countries founded on the historic bonds of friendship, solidarity, and a shared interest. When South Africa last hosted BRICS Plus Africa in 2018, we committed to, and I quote, a strategic partnership for the benefit of our people through the promotion of peace, a fairer international order, sustainable development, and inclusive growth, and to strengthen the 3 pillars, namely a driven cooperation in areas of the economy, peace and security, and people-to-people exchanges, at close quote. These pillars reflect the core objectives of BRICS. BRICS, as it stands, represents over 42% of the global population. BRICS represents 30% of the global territory of the world. BRICS represent over 30% of the global gross domestic product and, unfortunately, only 18% of global trade. And thus, the theme of this engagement more leaning towards how can we enhance trade. With Africa, which South Africa believes it is only working within regionally that we can advance for the common interest of all our peoples. If we add Africa as well as the other countries that have shown interest to be part of this broadening this platform, the BRICS platform will represent more than 50%, significantly more than 50% of the global population. We are aware that Africa is viewed as a region that has a competitive advantage in terms of its youthfulness. This demographic dividend can be fully unlocked if we ensure that the young people and various stakeholders are involved in the unfolding impact, high impact that the BRICS Plus and expanded platforms offer. Working together for mutual benefit and contributing towards a more equal, inclusive, peaceful and just global order will actually contribute to generations to come and indeed a better world. As our President Cyril Ramaphosa has indicated, it is time to stop begging, but part of stopping to beg is to begin to be productive. It is to begin to look at what economic endowments our various countries as the developing world have, and to unlock this through improved productivity, through expanded participation, and also through working together and enhancing fair trade, and in our particular case, closing the trade deficit. Recently, I went to a funeral of a young medical doctor colleague who, unfortunately, his car rammed into a truck that was carrying, heavy loads, and he and the niece she was with passed away. As we were debating this matter, the young people who were there were really lamenting the fact that his loss was a great loss, and one of his endeavors was to try and ensure that young people are mainstreamed, especially the young people like in our country who have been given the opportunity, and they took this opportunity positively to acquire knowledge, to acquire skills, and they are there, they are hungry to input into the development of their country. And they will be crying that they don't have opportunities. And they were looking at the state-owned enterprises, the public sector, and all that. And I said to them, yes, it is important that these spaces, we also transform them to be representative of younger professionals and skilled young people. And yes, it is important that we also make them responsive, representative, so that they're responsive to the ideals and the needs of the younger proportion, younger generation as a proportion of our country in particular. However, that truck must say to us, Why should we have so many trucks on our roads, especially carrying raw material? There are many of such trucks that are contributing as well to the high fatalities because many of them are not that visible on the roads. But more importantly, if we can take some comfort, some encouragement out of our memories of this young, vibrant professional who passed on, and may their souls rest in peace, and say, what lessons can we take out of this? There is just one lesson, that being resource intensive, being especially minerals rich country, we need to direct these raw materials that are going out of our harbors, out of our airports, more towards factories, including in rural provinces like the Limpopo provinces, so that the youthfulness that we have, the young people, transform the public sector, yes, but they are also helping to expand and grow our economy and create innovative interventions, technologies, and industries of the future. So the issue of beneficiations must not only be a dream. With the youth that we have that are hungry to participate, we can translate that into a much needed economic growth that is inclusive and a shared prosperity. And indeed, since its inception, BRICS has made important achievements and continues to foster international cooperation between governments, parties, business, and people-to-people exchanges. One of the major milestones we have achieved is what we established together as the BRICS countries or platform as the new development bank, what is referred to as the BRICS Bank. This institution was established to mobilize finance for infrastructure investment in BRICS countries and other emerging countries, as well as the currency contingency fund, which is looking at alternative lending options. BRICS continues to grow stronger, more reliable, and influential as a platform of and a voice that advances the common interest and common positions of the global South. As our president has said, indeed it is time for the global South to create its own space to contribute to the good of the collective. Through these and other joint efforts, BRICS today is a force for progressive change in global affairs and cannot be ignored. It is for this reason that the forthcoming BRICS summit in August in South Africa has attracted so much interest. BRICS can no longer be dismissed as an insignificant form. We meet today in a month that we refer to as the Nelson Mandela Month, to honor our father, the father of our liberation, the father of our democracy, Dr. Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela. Allow me to invoke the following soccer analogy as we gather to dissect a fresh path for BRICS in this latter part of this eventful century of great inequalities and the unfortunate rise of a unipolar world threat. And here's the football analogy of vital importance. Back in 2010, when we hosted FIFA World Cup for soccer, we declared our solidarity with the continent when we proclaimed that winning the right to host the spectacle was not only our triumph, but instead the victory for all of Africa's continent. Today, we also declare that our hosting of the BRICS summit, it is indeed an honor and a privilege and a great encouragement that the African Union is well behind South Africa, who is going to take over the chairpersonship of BRICS and take not only our country, but our continent and the BRICS family to greater heights in terms of improving the lives of their populations. Now, with more countries applying to be in the BRICS platform or forum, this will likely take the collective population of BRICS, as I've indicated, to more than half the global population, and even much more important, open up an all-new gigantic market potential for intertrade agreements that can yield untold economic benefits to member countries and indeed to the UN family. We hope and trust that the advancement of those that have been left behind is not seen and would not be seen as a threat to any of the advanced countries, but as a must-do to ensure that even the advanced countries are not the only ones that carry the aspiration of the peoples of the world, but even the countries that have been left behind contribute to this ideal. With South Africa being among the leading countries in mineral resources such as platinum and magnesium, the potential for new markets and new business expands exponentially through possible intertrade agreements with within the AU's Africa Free Trade Agreement and the BRICS platforms, in addition to the others. I'm fully cognizant of this potential, especially in my role as the custodian of the Progressive Business Forum. The role the Progressive Business Forum plays, especially in the context of facilitating trade and growth, is very critical. We ensure that there is dialogue amongst all interested parties, and that government is more available and accessible to other stakeholders, and stakeholders are able to also influence policy and unblock and unlock hurdles to ensuring that there is trade facilitation and improvement of our economy. And if we harness the full potential of BRICS plus Africa, the business possibilities are endless, and the potential for economies become a tangible hope to eradicate poverty and inequality, including through innovative industries of the future, which is for the benefit of generations to come. The theme of this colloquium, BRICS and Africa Partnership for Trade, Sustainable Development and a Shared Prosperity, hopes to reflect on the progress made and indeed get from various stakeholders inputs that will take us to the next level. We can also expect that the achievement of a shared prosperity in our country, the attainment of the Agenda 2063 for Africa, as well as the UN Sustainable Development Goals, will be closer than it has been if we succeed. I'd also like to reflect that part of the commitment is that of having peace and security to give development a chance. we call on all of us to reflect on ensuring that we do not support initiatives that exacerbate conflict, but we support those and those initiatives, including that of the African leaders, that call for the de-escalation of conflicts. Yes, between Ukraine and Russia, in Sudan, between Morocco and the Western Sahrawi, between the Palestinians and the Israeli, and anywhere else, let us give our peoples a chance for development through peace and security. Let me close by wishing all of us that are here a very robust and reflective engagement through the various colloquia, so that indeed when we succeed, your voice would have contributed, your intellect would have made a mark, and indeed the time that we have spent today would have made a difference to the many in our land and in our various countries. Charlotte Matweke is the first woman of African descent in South Africa to acquire a BSc degree. She mobilized for the establishment and the formation of the African National Congress, mobilizing leaders in the traditional leadership sector, in the faith sector, and those that were in the middle strata of then. She was not allowed to participate in the leadership positions only because she was a woman. We want to celebrate the fact that the world has come to realize that half of the earth is held by women. And that if women are left out of these endeavors to grow our economies and advance development, the world will be half poorer. So we want you to also reflect on creating an enabling environment for women to also participate. I've also reflected on young people. Many young people have also contributed to the peace and democracy that we enjoy today. And it is really not acceptable that we have, especially in our country, so many young, skilled people who are not given an opportunity to contribute to the development of their people. Let it also be an area of reflection, not only by government, but also by the private sector, so that when we achieve the goals that we achieve, we have the future leaders amongst us. I thank you, and I wish you a very successful colloquium.
Thank you very much once again to the Treasurer General of the ANC, Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa, for those fantastic words right there. And as she said, it is so important that our dialogues today are both future forward, that they are also, of course, thinking about the youth and also thinking about women. Because if we don't include women, the country, or in fact the world, or in this case the BRICS countries, would definitely be half poor. So it is so important that we also include women. So thank you so much for that wonderful welcome address. She also, of course, mentioned that 42% of the global population is presented when we talk about the BRICS countries. Yet only 18% of that talks about global trade. That means that today's theme is actually very, very relevant. How can we really enhance that trade? To take that 18% number even higher. So there's so much room still for growth, and there's so much room for improvement. And that's why today's discussion is going to be very solution orientated. And I'm hoping that you also are going to be learning a lot and gleaning a lot from the dialogues that are still going to be happening right here from the panels on stage. So we really look forward to that, and that's going to of course happen a little bit later on with the program that we've got planned for you today. So of course we are still part of the early birds, but there's more people still coming, so the seats that are still behind you will probably fill up as the day goes on. So make sure that you of course stay put to your seat so that we can just make the circle bigger, as they say in South Africa. So now to talk about what Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa has already really just whetted our appetite on, the coming BRICS summit. We've got Dr. Stravis Nicolau. He is going to give us an overview of the BRICS summit and the South African component of the BRICS Business Council. So can we please welcome onto stage the gentleman himself. He is the Aspen Pharmacy Group Senior Executive. Please welcome Stravis Nicolau.
Thank you, Program Director. I have a set of slides, and whilst they are being put up, may I firstly thank the Progressive Business Forum, the PBF, for this invitation. The PBF is a very important organisation, not only for dialogue but for doing business in our country. May I also acknowledge the first ever woman to hold the position of Treasurer General of the African National Congress, Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa. Should I say Malibongwe? Ikamalamkozikazi. Let me also acknowledge the ministers, deputy ministers, excellencies, ambassadors, members of the diplomatic corps, members of the media, and of course members of the PBF and the business fraternity in general. See, my slides are not coming up as I would have expected them to. Okay, here we go. Great, so I'm going to do, they're saying business, you must be flexible. So I'm going to do this and take you through a few slides. As you would have heard, I represent the South African chapter of the BRICS Business Council. All the members of the council, all 25, which I'll cover in a moment, are appointed by the respective governments. In the case of South Africa, the appointments happen by the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Minister Patel. And a good starting point, ladies and gentlemen, is just to unpack what does this thing of BRICS mean. And we've had a lot of questions from business, from civil society, from labour saying, well, what does this actually tangibly translate into? And is it beneficial to be in BRICS? So these are some of the questions that I wish to respond to today. And let me start off by saying that first of all, as the TG indicated, BRICS represents 42% of the world's population, 30% of the world's territory, and a very important statistic, 31.5% of the world's GDP. Now let me place that in perspective. In purchase power parity terms, the G7 represents 30% of the world's GDP. So BRICS has just recently overtaken the G7, which was always held out and continues to be held out as an important political and economic formation. So BRICS is now slightly larger in GDP terms than the G7. And then lastly, it represents 18% of global trade. Okay, hopefully this is going to work, Anton. Sorry for this glitch. Can you help out, Anton? Next slide. Sorry for the technical glitch here. Okay, let me carry on talking nonetheless. Let's just analyze what this 18% of global trade means. And what does it mean for us as South Africa in particular? Firstly, over a 4-year period, 2017 to 2021, the growth in trade, intra-BRICS, grew by 44%. So it outstripped the average global trade growth by quite a significant measure. And it also meant that it was one of the fastest growing regions, economically speaking, in the world. So I think it's an important perspective. Let me turn then, because I'm going to come back to this point, let me turn to what the role of the BRICS Business Council is. So our role is very simple, a very clear mandate. It is to strengthen and promote economic trade, business and investment ties between the business communities of the BRICS countries in the national and continental interests. Now, as the TG said, the S in BRICS is South Africa and by extension the rest of the African continent. So when we go and represent South Africa, we also look to integrate the rest of the continent. What is our specific role? Where do we fit in? Firstly, we advocate the value of BRICS to all stakeholders. We foster regular dialogue and interface with our business communities across the 5 countries. And if there are opportunities beyond the 5 countries, we also discuss those. And a very important aspect of how we operate, because all 5 countries, whether it's Russia, or China, India, Brazil, all 5 countries want to do the same thing. They all want to create jobs, they all want to industrialize. So we work on the basis of identifying complementarities. Where do the complementarities reside? And that is an underlying principle of how we look to grow trade, economy and investment. And then lastly, we play a role, particularly here in South Africa, to position our country, the country's brand, the country's reputation, within the BRICS markets, but also beyond into the global community. We, of course, also foster relationships between the business communities and government, if and where necessary, if there are bottlenecks, if there is regular, visas, for example, that cannot be accessed, etc. We do play that role as well. Next slide, please. Okay, these are very briefly the council members. I'm not going to run through each of them, other than to say that we are particularly proud that we have 2 female council members. The other chapters have 0 female council members, so TG, we're leading in this area. We probably need 3, but for the moment, at least 40% of the council members are women. Next slide. Okay, this is a very important slide, because how do we go about facilitating the trade, the dialogue between business constituencies of the 2 countries? And we do this through the formation of 9 working groups. And the real engine room of BRICS Business Council is this slide here. It's not the 5 people you saw before. The 5 people are like the board. The real action is in the working groups. Now, what are these working groups? We identified with our government right at the beginning. So 2013 is when the council was incepted, and at that time we identified what are those important sectors that will trigger growth within BRICS and within the countries and intra-BRICS, and in our case intracontinentally as well. So what were these 9 sectors? Okay, and we actually only started off TG with 6, but it's now grown to 9. And to make the TG very happy this morning, there's going to be a 10th one, which we will introduce, but we will surprise you on what that is going to be. Okay, now, what are the 9 working groups? Agribusiness and agriculture, and headed up by Wandile Siklobo. Aviation. Aviation also includes tourism, incidentally, and the AXA CEO, Mpumi Mpofu, heads that one up. Deregulation, like I spoke earlier, Advocate Mtar heads that one up. Digital economy, very important, because these are the platforms that compete against the other global sales platforms. And Ziad Suleiman heads that one up. Energy and green economy, Brian Dahms heads that one up. Financial services is a very important one at the moment. There's discussions around reserve contingencies, discussions around BRICS currencies, reserve currencies, etc. Those conversations link with the new development bank, the BRICS bank, and those discussions are happening in this particular working group. Infrastructure is Ravindra Naidu, manufacturing Nizam Khala, and lastly, skills development, which is Mapule, who's an expert in skills development. May I just say that the manufacturing one also includes healthcare and pharmaceuticals, and to that end, when we host the summit of 22nd to 24th of August, there will be a very important side event which will be led by African Union, Africa CDC, the BRICS Business Council, and our own government here in South Africa. And that will be on pandemic preparedness. Next slide, please. I gave you an inkling earlier that the Council was established in 2013, so this year we celebrate our 10-year anniversary. Colleagues, these slides are available, and there's a lot of slides. I don't intend covering all of them. We have given permission for the slides to be circulated to all the delegates. I would need a very long time to go through all the activities of the Council, as you can imagine. But let us say that some of the highlights of the Council has been, firstly, the establishment of a new development bank, the BRICS Bank. That was an idea that was conceived actually from the South African side in 2013, 2014, and the bank has been established. I think we're all well acquainted with the successes of the bank, and that was a very important financing vehicle that was put into place. Of course, we will continue to agitate as a council for the bank to be more diversified in its financing, i.e. looking less at these large-scale infrastructure projects and looking more at financing for industrialization, both within BRICS but also more broadly. Egypt has now joined the bank as well. So we have that particular priority as well when we discuss with the bank. We've seen trade grow. I gave you the measures of growth earlier. That's been certainly successful. But TG, we're not happy as South Africa for one reason. We are in the process of analysing the trade, and regrettably South Africa runs a trade deficit with Brazil, Russia, India and China. Now that's not a problem, but we are looking to see how we can level out and balance trade between these four countries. And in doing so, the exercise that we are mapping out is looking at what sectors, products, goods and services are contributors to those deficits, and how do we replace some of those with South African produced goods. So that is a very important piece of work now that South Africa is chairing the council that we are seized with, and in our council board meeting in August, that will be one of the top agenda items, because of course these are partnerships, and part of partnership means you grow together and you try and find those opportunities to bridge the trade deficits where they exist. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Okay. As the TG mentioned earlier, South Africa assumes the chairmanship of BRICS. As you know, the chairmanship of BRICS, or chairpersonship, unfortunately, TG, all five are males, the heads of state. So when Dilma Rousseff was there, it was different. So the chairmanship of of BRICS rotates every year. So every 5 years, South Africa has the opportunity to chair. So it's our turn now. And we also get to set the theme for the next 12 months. So the theme for the next 12 months for BRICS is a very Afrocentric one, as you would expect. It's BRICS and Africa, partnerships for mutually accepted growth, sustainable development, and inclusive multilateralism. So we are highly sensitive and conscious to the geopolitics that are playing out, and we believe that trade, economy, business, and investment is a great stabilizer globally and is a great contributor to achieving global peace and security. So it's not by accident that we have selected this theme, and in particular looking to integrate Africa into these activities, but also to strongly send a message around multilateralism as the only way to move ahead in the global picture. What are some of our priorities as a council? I'll run through these very quickly. Developing a partnership towards equitable, just transitioning, transforming education and skills development for the future, unlocking opportunities through the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. That's how we intend to integrate the continent into BRICS. Strengthening post-pandemic socio-economic recovery and the attainment of the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development. And lastly, as I said earlier, strengthening multilateralism as a very important element to achieving global peace and security. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm not going to cover each of these in detail because I said I'm going to give you the slides, but this dissects these 5 priorities. It provides the detail, how we intend getting there, the work plan for the next 12 months. And of course, this work doesn't cease once South Africa hands over chairmanship it will be to Brazil next. The work continues, but this is to give you a sense as business people in this audience. What are these particular activities? Where do the business opportunities reside in these 5 priorities? So next slide, please. Okay, this is on education and skills development. It gives some of the detail. Next slide. Okay, this is on African Continental Free Trade Area. I'm pleased to tell you that Wankele, the Director General of Africa Continental Free Trade Area, heads up the Secretariat, will feature prominently in the program and agenda during the summit here in South Africa. Next slide. Okay. I mentioned earlier that we are pleased at the growth, the 44% growth over a 4-year period, 2017 to 2021. However, as South Africa, we are looking to address those trade deficits. So the trade deficit is actually highest with China. It's 67, 68%. Sorry, let me just dissect that for 1 minute. Within BRICS, 68% of South Africa's trade is with China, 27% is with India, 4.2% is with Brazil, and about 2% is with Russia. So that gives you a dissection of where we are trade heavy and trade light. So we do want to even this out a little more, not only at a trade deficit level, but to find those opportunities, sectorially speaking or product-wise, where we can look to change this picture as well, because we are quite top-heavy with 2 countries here, China and India. Our total export as South Africa to the BRIC countries, the 4 BRIC countries, has recorded a strong growth since 2016, approximately 7% per year, which outstrips our average growth in exports as a country. And we reached about $18 billion in 2022, and the principal contributor has been to China, but we still run a very high deficit with China, which we want to address, of course. South Africa's imports from the BRIC countries, the 4 BRIC countries, has expanded by 7.3%. So it's slightly, so we've imported slightly more than we've exported to the 4 BRIC countries over the same period. So we're importing 33 billion, but only exporting around 18 billion. So consequently, we recorded, as I said earlier, a trade deficit of around $15 billion in the collective balance of trade with the BRICS economies in 2022. That's more than double the deficit that existed in 2010 before the formation of the BRICS Business Council. So these are some of the areas, TG, we wish to address. They're very important areas to balance and even out the trade. Next slide, please. Right, what is, as the South African chapter of the BRICS Business Council, what is our positioning, our posture that we are taking? We are very much in the mode of the next decade of trade between the BRICS countries and whoever else joins BRICS. I understand that 38 countries have applied for membership or intend applying for membership. So that will grow this entity into a massive entity. It's already big. It will grow it even further. But it's very important to establish the principles of positioning, the principles of posture right now. So this is what you can expect from the Council of the next decade, and certainly we will advocate and agitate for this as the South African chapter. Very much about balancing of trade through bilateral and multilateral agreements within the BRICS nations, exploring value chain opportunities, backwardly integrating those into Africa in line with the Free Trade Area Agreement. This can be achieved just very high level through economic collaboration, evening out of trade patterns and how those patterns are composed, and then a BRIC African specific agenda. Next slide, please. Right, where do the opportunities reside if we are to look at the Free Trade Area Agreement? Firstly, Africa's GDP is approaching $4 trillion. So it sits at about $3.6 trillion at the moment. Now, if you are an African country and you go it alone, you're very small. Suddenly, if you add the whole of Africa, it's 1.3 billion people, 1.3 billion citizens. It's an economy close to $4 trillion. All of a sudden, you can start competing. But it involves aggregating the economies and the volumes. Economies, a scale of Africa. So that's what the free trade area is about. It's about aggregating those to give Africa leverage to do much bigger deals with other trading partners across the globe. Now, the other important thing to note is that by 2050, which is not that far away, Minister Zulu, I don't know if we'll be alive then, but 2050 nonetheless, right? The population of Africa will double, and Africa will become the second most populous continent in the world. So we shouldn't forget that. So we're not doing these deals for today, we're doing this for the future. And a very important way of doing that is to aggregate the markets, aggregate the volumes, and that's what we are looking to do through Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We are prioritizing value chains on the continent through the Africa Continental Free Trade in agriculture, agro-processing, automotive and vehicle parts, pharmaceuticals, services, technologies, logistics and distribution. That's what the free trade area has identified as some of the growth opportunities, and those are being presented as we speak at the moment. Okay, I'm going to skip the rest of this. Localization on the continent is key. I cannot stress that enough. We cannot be in a position where we continue to harvest raw material. We export a ton of iron ore at $100. We buy back a cell phone on the continent. It's got 1 microgram of iron ore in it, and we're paying 10,000 Rand or 20,000 Rand. Cannot continue that. It's a very important priority for South Africa, for the continent, and we are looking for partners that will drive that common objective with us. And that's what we are doing. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. Let me try and end off. I'm not going to go through this. I'll rather circulate it, as I said, and then you can see what the activities are. Let me just stress again, ladies and gentlemen and friends and colleagues, that the summit proper is between the 22nd to the 24th of August, including when the heads of state meet, including the presidential banquet. But in between and during that period, the Business Council has arranged a number of activities. And some of these activities start as early as the week of the 13th. I'm going to spare you the detail, but these are the activities. You can have a look at this in your own time. There's a particular way of becoming involved in this, which I'll end off with. Next slide, please. And, sorry, just go back one. Okay. So, quite important from a Business Council perspective is, number one, the new Development Bank breakfast, which is on Monday the 21st. The BRICS Business Council 10th anniversary celebration. TG, we're not going to give you, we're going to surprise you. But we are planning a really, if I can call it, heartwarming South African event on the day. It's a significant celebration. It's 10 years of the council since it was formed. And we hope to leave an indelible mark on all the business delegates that attend on that day. The BRICS Business Council annual general meeting happens the next day, as does the BRICS Business Forum. Now, what I can tell you is that we have invited 60 heads of state, 60, not 16, 60 heads of state have been invited, and there are confirmation of around 22 have accepted the invitation from our President Ramaphosa. So expect a number of heads of state to be here. Of course, this area we're in today will be red-coded. It will be in complete lockdown. But importantly, that the 5 BRICS heads of state will attend the Business Forum and interact and interface with the business communities of these 5 countries. We're having 100 delegates from each of the 5 countries, 100 South Africans, 100 Brazilians, 100 Russians, and so on and so forth. And then the other 500 invites reside with our government and various other entities. The diplomats of the 5 countries will have some seats for their business communities. So the Business Forum is a particular highlight. The AGM of the Business Council, which prepares us to hand over the chair to Brazil, also very important, but it's also the time where we agree and finalize the report of what was achieved in the last 12 months. And then always a highlight for the council is we hand over these reports. We hand them over to our 5 heads of state. So we will be handing it over to President Ramaphosa and so on and so forth for the other BRICS colleagues. We are on the 23rd planning study tours to the Johannesburg Securities Exchange, the Innovation Hub, and others. There will also be, on the morning of the 20th, the 9 working groups will meet and also reflect on the work that was done over the last 12 months and also speak about the future. So colleagues, let me end off then by firstly saying that we are extremely honoured, privileged and delighted as South Africa to be hosting an event of this magnitude, gravitas and status, particularly at this time where there is so much geopolitical uncertainty. Unfortunately, the geopolitics have sidetracked us somewhat, but as a council, we remain firmly riveted and firmly focused on delivering on the business aspects. We don't wish to get drawn into, I was discussing with Minister Zulu earlier, any sideshows. We are there to drive business cooperation, investment, trade, and economy and commerce. and that's where we will remain firmly focused. We will, as a country, deliver a world-class event, and we will continue speaking and collaborating with our partners, all like-minded partners, no matter what part of the world they reside in. Because for our people, for our continent, it's about lifting people out of poverty, it's about industrializing economies, and we want partners, like-minded partners, that are going to help us industrialize, they're going to help us take Africa away from poverty, bridge the gap, and provide opportunities, particularly for our young people in this country. So thank you very much to each and every one of you for listening to me. I hope I wasn't too baritone, but we are immensely excited as a country, as a council, to be hosting this event, and we welcome you to South Africa, the ambassadors that are here, all your delegates, and we will ensure that we continue working together with a common vision and a common goal. Thanks very much. It's been a great pleasure speaking to you.
Stavros, that was incredible. Thank you so much. A lot of content, a lot of substance, very value-adding to our members. We sincerely appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause for Stavros Nicolaou. As you know, the Progressive Business Forum always promises to add a lot of value to our members. And in special situations such as this year, the honor we have of hosting the BRICS Summit, Stavros, we're so appreciative of the substance and the depth that you took us through, highlighting the work of the Business Council, especially with the 10th year anniversary coming up, and underlining the fact that South Africa is very conscious of its role in BRICS to make sure that we bring the rest of Africa along with us, including through the Africa Free Trade Agreement. Also highlighting the role of the new development bank. As you know, one of the vice presidents there, who's in fact the CFO of the bank, is our South African executive director at BRICS. So that was really very useful. We appreciate it. Thanks, Stavros. Okay, so the next item on our agenda this morning, ladies and gentlemen, we're very, very pleased. We're moving from discussing the business context now to hearing from the Honorable Obed Bapela. He's going to be taking us through the BRICS Plus political party dialogue. So that aspect of it is going to be shared with us shortly. A brief background on Honorable Bapela. He's been an MP, a Member of Parliament, for over 20 years now. He's currently the Deputy Minister of Public Enterprises, also previously Deputy Minister of Cooperative Government and Traditional Affairs, and also prior to that, the Deputy Minister in the Presidency, responsible for monitoring and evaluation, and also previously Deputy Minister of Communications. So very illustrious CV. We're very much looking forward to hearing more about the political party dialogue around BRICS. Welcome, Deputy Minister.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I was complaining to the person sitting next to me that other CVs were not read. They were just flighted, and why mine is being read, but it's fine. And thank you very much for making me popular. Program Directors, greetings this morning to all of you, Ntate Matumani and Ms. Dubrain, the ANC official represented here by our Treasurer General, Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa, other NEC members who also are present in the gathering, ministers and deputy ministers, alliance leadership if present, diplomatic corps as represented here, business, academia, youth, because the youth also have what we call the BRICS Youth Association, and media, ladies and gentlemen, Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to come and talk here. I know that it was the Deputy Secretary General, the first, Comrade Nomvula Mgonyani, was supposed to be presenting. So I'm going to read her speech as prepared and punctuate it here and there. On behalf of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, I greet all participants and guests. Thank you to the program directors and organizers for the platform. Program directors, thank you for inviting us to this important colloquium, convened a few days before the ANC hosts the second edition of the BRICS Political Parties Plus Dialogue. Once more, the African National Congress is honored to invite and host BRICS political parties. As per the establishment of the tradition and through consultations, we also have extended invitations to fraternal and progressive parties from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And on that one, we can just indicate countries such as United Arab Emirates have shown interest and they are sending delegations. Iran is sending delegations. Saudi Arabia is also from that part of the world because they've indicated their willingness to want to be part of BRICS, one way or the other, maybe through the bank or through the membership, and that matter will be discussed, obviously, by the heads of state, the main BRIC members when they meet. From Latin America, the party of President Lula da Silva is mobilizing also that side for the Latin American parties to also join. And I know they have mobilized Venezuela. I see the ambassador of Venezuela is here. Mexico also has indicated, and Argentina is also indicated. Those are the three so far from the Latin America that are also beginning to show willingness to also associate with BRICS. So we have invited even those parties from those countries to be present in this particular important meeting. We will converge on the 18th and the 20th July, as the Treasurer General had already alluded to the issue, at the Bedwood Hotel in Boksburg under the theme BRICS and Africa Partnering for Mutuality, Accelerated Growth, Sustainable Development and Inclusive Multilateralism. We took the theme as is and we had broken it into sub-themes for debate, discussions, 5 themes that will then be solely be engaged. Why the political parties are meeting, it is because they are influencing the outcomes of the debates by the heads of states. And I know that some of the agenda items are not in the priority of the heads of states, but the parties have felt strongly that this must be on the agenda. And one of it, it's the popular debate that is out there in the space, the medium of exchange of currencies for trading, and others they say is the de-dollarization, engagements and discussions that are taking place. It's a very broad debate that is out there. We want this BRICS summit in August to take advantage of it, and the political parties will come out of the meeting with a declaration having discussed that will then be delivered to the heads of states as they go into the meeting in August. So we therefore are seeing this engagement as an influential platform to really ensure therefore that the governing parties in the BRICS can also take it on board. We also agree that we'll also engage on the current neoliberal international order as not sustainable. From 1945, that has been the order. We have been yearning for a multilateral order. We have it in statutes, in the law. However, the applications are not there. One dominant force or a few dominant forces dictates what happens in the world. And yet, we want to live in a world that is just, fair and equitable for all, where the international rules are applied fairly and equally to all. We agree that the unilateralism and unipolarity has not led to peace and stability. Hence, we have conflicts, some of them mentioned by the Treasurer General earlier, and that we are therefore pursuing for an environment of coexistence, of harmony, of peace, and hence the African Peace Mission Initiative is one of those that we think will also be debating to consolidate and to support the heads of states that have already initiated from Africa and mobilizing those from Latin America and also Asia to join in this bandwagon to ensure therefore that we're able to stop the escalation of the war which is taking place in Europe as known as Russia and Ukraine. So we are going to be really focusing and then consolidating on that peace initiative, taking the 10 points by the heads of states of Africa and consolidating them in these BRICS political parties, and then that they should also be concluded in the summit itself. We also agree that we are witnessing unprecedented political, economic, and military technological advances from many parts of the world outside of the Western sphere of influence. We all agree that the global South, and particularly Africa, is not adequately represented in major organs of global governance. So I was recently in Brazil, and they were saying that in the whole of Latin America, they only have one person representing or heading one institutions in the UN, and yet they have this sizable population from the Caribbean up to the Latin America, but only one person in the body that is coming from that region. We can count also on the Africa, we can count on Asia. You will find that the numbers are fewer, and then the dominant is unfortunately those that are in the northern sphere. So therefore Africa wants full representation, including obviously Latin America and Asia, as we will be collaborating on this issue, including the transformation of the United Nations, in which we are still yearning to have permanent seats in the UN Security Council, and will be taking advantage of this collaboration, the cooperation that is growing in the global South to assert and support each other, that Asia has representatives, Africa has, and then also Latin America has, and we are able to restructure, taking advantage of the tensions that are there, but also the geopolitics that ought to really go the way of building a multi-polar world order. We have witnessed a number of countries that have applied for and expressed to wish to join the BRICS. That matter will be debated by political parties too, to ensure therefore that if there's an expansion, what does that mean? And then those who are coming, are they coming into the bank, or they're coming into BRICS itself? And then what will be the issues that we'll then be looking at, and so that we could also then begin to submit and have a declaration that will express itself. We all agree that the current dollar-dominated financial systems and transaction is not sustainable, and it gives a single country who wields excessive power across the world. I've already alluded to it. There is debate on the de-dollarization. We will be definitely discussing it. We all agree that the current human behavior and actions are deepening erratic climate change with devastating destruction to our environment, jobs, habitat, health, and food security. We'll be also debating on that particular issue, and added that will be the impact of the war on our continent, particularly Africa, where we have seen the cost of living escalating. We are seeing the shortage of the fertilizer also contributing to the price of food, and then the food insecurity being the rising agenda and so forth. Hence, we want to see the end of the war. Program directors and distinguished participants, the key question we ought to ask in our reflection is, what is it to be done? Some of the issues were mentioned by Stavros Nicolaou around the BRICS business. We are therefore also going to be engaging as instructed by the ANC National Conference held December 2022, which instructed us to organize and host the second BRICS political party, the first being 2018, now our opportunity of hosting it 2023. It is happening next week, Monday. The delegates are arriving. It's happening in South Africa. It will go on as planned. And amongst the people that we have invited are some of the eminent persons in Africa. Those that have confirmed is the former president of Nigeria, Obasanjo, and also the former president of South Africa, Kgalema Motlanthe, but we are still waiting for other confirmations to come in. We have invited them as esteemed and eminent persons to come and add to the debates and the discussion so that we can then reflect on where the world is and how do we go forward. Due to the magnitude of challenges of our times, the ANC decided to start the BRICS Political Parties Plus Dialogue on the 18th of July 2023, coinciding with the 105th anniversary of Nelson Mandela, a day the United Nations and its member states designated Nelson Mandela International Day. Nelson Mandela being the first president of a liberated and a democratic South Africa. This is the best way to show honor to our nationalist and president. Every year we celebrate the anniversary of President Mandela by spending 67 minutes in service to humanity, true to the legacy that is Nelson Mandela. Dear participants, the objectives of the delegates and representatives of the BRICS political parties and fraternal organizations will be two, amongst others, discuss and agree on the new multi-order, I've already spoke, on the multilateral system, on the transformed UN system that I said, also the UN Security Council, on the new system of global trade relations, taking advantage that Africa has what we call the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. We'll then take it and say, how do we increase trade amongst countries in the Asia and also in Latin America? And we have a model that we'll also be using as a platform, and luckily the Secretary General of the Africa Free Trade Agreement will be participating in some of the panels during the party political to share a model so that trade can happen amongst nations without tariffs. But obviously the issues of the infrastructure will arise, how then goods moves from one to the other. Even in Africa, we have not resolved that issue, and I'm glad that the BRICS Business Council is also going to be focusing and dealing with that. But we want that at the end of the BRICS Summit, there are two working groups that emerges. One on the infrastructure within the trade, within BRICS, and then those will be expanding to. The second one will be the industrialization that we want to emerge in the BRICS, because as Africa in particular, we are not enough industrializing, and we then have to really begin to look. We know that industrialization will go with the building of the skills, and the skills revolution, investment and focus, dedicated element ought to arise as one of the resolutions, so that we can no longer just extract and then send out, but we could also beneficiate, manufacture, but obviously we need to build that skills base to ensure that we are able to reach. The issue of the balanced new currency systems will also be one of the resolutions we'll emerge with. The contribution towards the sustainable development, climate change, and harnessing the new technologies, preserving the capacities as we manage just transitions. Deepening the economic cooperation as we emerge from COVID-19 pandemic and building better for the future. Now that the pandemic had really showed the constraints of human existence, how do we build better so that we have resilient nations and countries going forward? The strengthening the BRICS and expanding membership through the agreed criteria, as I already alluded to, and rebuilding the international solidarity. Comrades and Program Director, these are my short remarks, and again thank you for giving us the platform as the African National Congress, and then that the ANC, NEC looks forward to a successful BRICS dialogue and hosting all the countries. And as I go down, Program Director, the stats that Stavros gave, the biggest trade currently with South Africa is the EU-UK combined. They are number one, for obvious reasons that obviously we were colonized by some of them, and that is why trade is always as dominant. China is now number two. It has overtaken USA. And for those who have to do businesses of going forward in investing. China is now number 2, US is number 3, India is number 4, and Africa is number 5. So if you focus on those 5 trades, then you know you'll be going somewhere in the future. If any of them decides to do otherwise, we will still have 4 that will remain as our anchor trade partners. But we hope, therefore, that the engagement with the US about some of the rumors that we hear will then begin to yield positive results that they do not then begin to do something around the relationship on trade with South Africa. Because some of the issues that they were raising are not true. Now what happens? Brazil is lowest, and luckily LATAM, which is an airline from Chile, dominant in the Brazilian space, will be starting to operate between Johannesburg and Sao Paulo from September this year. South African Airways, now coming to public enterprise, will be starting 2 operations per week, Johannesburg, Sao Paulo, and then Cape Town, Sao Paulo, flights from October. And start book yourself, go and trade and go and start businesses in that area. Already there, I found that the SPA is operating with their liquor store, Tops, and the popular brand from Tops is Amarula, by the Brazilians. I don't know why Amarula. And then they were then complaining that cider is not coming enough into the Brazilian space. So those who want to trade, that's the space for you. But particularly in Brasilia, which is their new capital, there's none cider drink, there's nothing South African, and because it's there is the elitist, and then its government, its official offices, the manufacturing hub in Brazil, obviously for you is Sao Paulo. So they will be aiding those airlines from October. So it's going to be a 9-hour flight now. I traveled 24 hours to Brazil, Johannesburg, Dubai, 4 hours, 8 hours on airline, 4 hours in Dubai, and then 14 hours to Brazil, Sao Paulo, and 1 hour, 40 minutes to Brasilia. So you leave here on a Thursday, you arrive there on a Saturday. So now, from October, you leave the same day, you arrive the same day. It's just the differences of times. So SAA is now there available. Will be, obviously, with the Dubai leg, India and others, we still are code-shared with the Emirates, and SAA is code-shared there. But obviously, we'll be looking at China now reviving the China airline, which was operating before COVID, but with COVID, and China has introduced their new airlines. We hope they will be also looking. So movements of goods and people will be made easier over a period of time. It may take us not only 5 years, but obviously we have to look at those issues when we deal with infrastructure and trade. Thank you very much, Program Directors.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's please give Honorable Obed Babela a big round of applause one more time. You know, what he has mentioned is so important. Manufacturing and innovation and even industrialization, these things are very important. But for these to really progress the way we want to, skills development can't be left out of that particular dialogue. And that's why skills development is also really crucial to what we're trying to achieve as a collective. What now, the other really beautiful thing is just how just small things make a big difference. I mean, just listen to that trip from Brazil. Normally a 24-hour trip that can now be reduced to a 9-hour trip. Those type of partnerships, those type of, let's just say the SAA just being there is something that really enables so many other types of businesses now to trade, whereas before it might have seemed unfeasible. So it is so important that these dialogues that we're having here today actually lead to that that type of progress, those solution-orientated things that we talked about in the beginning, these are the ones that really do indeed progress us forward as a collective. So up next, we're going to hear about the presentation of the Colloquium sessions, and this is going to be by the CEO of the Progressive Business Forum. She holds a number of different accolades, and in fact, she has served in many senior executive roles for Transnet, PRASA, Post Office, the Tshwane Municipality, and is also the former Chief of Staff for the Gauteng Department of Health. Please put your hands together for the CEO of the Progressive Business Forum, Ms. Humaria Muikesi Chunara.
I am aware that we started a little bit late, so I'll be straight and to the point with my presentation. It's not a full presentation like the ones that you had, the 3 presentations that give you content of BRICS and all of that. May I start by saying that thanking the program director, the Treasurer General, who also is the chair of the Progressive Business Forum, the honorable ministers of government, ambassadors and high commissioners. For those who don't know, South Africa has the highest number of embassies in the world. The diplomats of the various foreign missions and trade offices, members of the BRICS Business Council, facilitators, moderators, speakers, panelists, representatives of international and local trade and investment bodies, captains of industry and business representatives, federations and associations, all protocol observed. Some years ago, I was watching a program called Three-Way, and Tony Blair was on this program, and they were doing door-to-door campaign. Now, he reiterated the story of an old lady that she was trying to convince to vote for his party, the Labour Party. He told her that they are going to protect the country against weapons of mass destruction. And the old lady looked at him and said, "You know, I've had rats for so many years in my yard. You couldn't get rid of them. And today you're telling me that when you can't get rid of a rat, you can get rid of the weapons of mass destruction. And you expect me to believe you." I'm mentioning this story because we know that our former President Nelson Mandela was very angry and felt betrayed by Tony Blair. And he gave him a call, and we hear that how they described that phone call, that it was a breathing fire. He was breathing fire down the phone. So when the old lady told Tony Blair about this, he remembered, and that's what he was saying on Three-Way. He remembered the words of Nelson Mandela. And he said, "I will always be guided by his ethos, by his wisdom." As we look forward towards the BRICS, we need to think again today about the big things, the 4IR, all those big things that we'll be talking about, that amongst us, represented by the PBF right here today, are small businesses who are trying to survive on a daily basis, especially after COVID. And they want to hear their voices heard as we discuss all those big things in BRICS. And I'm very, very pleased to have heard that there are opportunities, and we would like to see them translating into real businesses for our people in this country, in all countries, not one country. Ladies and gentlemen, it is therefore a privilege and honor for me as the CEO of the Progressive Business Forum that we could host today's colloquium and the gala dinner which will be held later tonight. Hosting BRICS carries hope for a better life for all nations that will be participating. Let me not assume that everybody knows what PBF is all about. PBF is a subscription-based organization which was established in 2006. Its members are drawn from small businesses, big businesses, and all sectors. We also have PCF, which is a Progressive Citizens Forum. So amongst us today, we also have citizens represented through the outreach program to make sure that everybody understands what is going to happen during BRICS and how our interests are going to be represented, and to give every one of our businesses and citizens an opportunity to have a way to give their inputs. The organization manages and curates a raft of programs designed to provide platforms for engagement on business and economic matters. We promote dialogue among social partners, we forge sustainable business partnerships, we fundraise for programs, activities, and meaningful social causes. Earlier this year, we were raising funds for the so-called missing the students who can't pay for their fees. We foster understanding of emerging business opportunities and trends. We encourage growth and trade commerce. We mobilize for assistance and guidance to members. We promote our members internationally. So today's colloquium is an effort by PBF to bring businesses of all sizes and citizens to the table to create an opportunity for members to engage with those who will be representing their interests at the BRICS Summit so that they can represent us from a well-informed position. Today's colloquium, ladies and gentlemen, is part and parcel of many programs offered by the PBF. The BRICS, the potential that lies within BRICS economies suggests it stands to dominate the global economy in the not too distant future. You've heard the previous speaker who gave the numbers. We simply want a share and not domination of one country taking it all. It is therefore with the interest of our respective people in mind that today's colloquium is being hosted to highlight further trade and investment opportunities and to focus our attention on practical engagement around the BRICS market potential and to locate South African businesses as part thereof. You would have seen that we have a substantial program today. Today, as after my presentation, we'll be going for tea, and we'll have very interesting topics when we come back. I think one of the previous speakers said that we want to be very practical. We don't want theory, we don't want policies and all of that. So we'll have a topic on BRICS as a platform for SME growth. After the 1 hour lunch, we'll have a session on easing the trade and investment flows between the BRICS countries, competing in an era of international trade partnerships. Then a session on promoting BRICS business-to-business opportunities. And of course, going forward, PBF will be arranging a number of B2B engagements to give an opportunity to many of the South African businesses to engage with their counterparts in the BRICS communities and forge partnerships for exports and imports. We'll have short tea thereafter, and we'll conclude today's colloquium with the final session on promoting health, skills development, manufacturing, and innovation. It is our intention to conclude today's colloquium by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, in time to register for the gala dinner, which will be hosted by our Minister of Mineral and Energy, and where our President will be the main speaker. In conclusion, I just want to thank all the sponsors, because I'll not have time to come back here. Today's event would have not been possible without the gracious and generous support of the sponsors of the colloquium and gala dinner. My role now is to really thank them and ask them to partner with us as we move forward. We trust that you'll take the opportunity presented by the colloquium to engage actively and to be prompted by the outcome of this engagement to give effect to the enormous potential contained in the BRICS market and ultimately to the sustained benefit of all our people. Before I sit, there's a message of support from the Russian embassy. I've said that we have many embassies in South Africa. I think there are 42 of them, if I'm not wrong. And today, in our midst, we have at least 11 of those embassies represented. Thank you very much. We have a video that will be played, which is a message of support to the colloquium and to the gala dinner later on. It comes from the Russian embassy. Can we put it on, please, as I go and sit down? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation to address the summit today. I would like to emphasize the importance of BRICS integration for the economies and people of our states. Social economic aspect of such cooperation is extremely vital, especially in the context of current global situation. Working together and implementing joint programs, we have unique opportunity of facilitating growth and ensuring stable development of our countries. Moreover, this undoubtedly also has a positive external effect on the economies of the African states outside BRICS. The new development bank is a mechanism within BRICS that is used for financing infrastructure projects and projects in the field of sustainable development. The indirect response to the challenges the BRICS members face. The most recent example is the program towards combating the COVID-19 and overcoming social-economic impacts of the pandemic. The BRICS Business Council serves as a platform for strengthening business, trade, and investment cooperation between our countries. Year 2023 marks the 10th anniversary of this structure that reflects its demand. We have already achieved great progress, and I believe we should keep on exploring new opportunities of expanding cooperation with the BRICS in different areas. This includes usage of national currencies in the trade, cooperation in the energy sphere, agribusiness, and other fields. Thank you. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to address the summit today.
That was a wonderful message. I think we also have another one later. Ms. Mugetse Chumara, thank you for mentioning our sponsors. I neglected earlier to specifically mention Nomolux Group and NG Global Energy Solutions. So thank you very much to those sponsors as well.
Let's give the sponsors a big round of applause one more time.
Weza, I'm really looking forward to the panel discussions later when we come back from tea. It's going to be a different format when we come back into the room.
Yes, definitely a different format, and that's actually why, as you guys can see, there's this lovely display right here. The guys are going to be actually sitting talk show style and having a really lovely conversation. I think it's going to be a lively conversation, lots of interaction, and it'll also be an opportunity for you to actually engage with some of our panelists as well. But actually, just before we get that, did you notice that that was an English video that was playing? Felt very Russian, eh? I was also, the first time and the second time I watched it, I was like, this is Russian. Then we found someone to get a translation, and then the Russian person said, but this is English. I was like, oh. So what I realized is, when countries work together, we start to form new languages, So now this was a good blend of Russian-English, It was really definitely that. So just so that we all get the gist of the message that was being shared, I'd like to just mention some of the points that he actually mentioned in the particular video. He said that this cooperation is vital, and especially in the context of the current events in the world. Working together, we'll have a unique opportunity to ensure that we enhance state development of our countries. It will have a positive external effect on all involved in BRICS, and the new development bank will ensure to fund BRICS projects and sustainable development. The bank is in response to the challenges the BRICS members face, and that is all about cooperation and development. So that's just in a quick nutshell what he was talking about. So we thank the ambassador, of course, from that Russian embassy for his message of support. We've got one more message of support just before we go on to tea, and we'd actually like to welcome onto stage next. Now, with my best Portuguese, I would like to welcome on next Felix Baez de Faria. Yes, I hope I said that right. Yeah, he's charges the affairs of a minister or counselor of the Embassy of Brazil in Pretoria. Please give him a big round of applause as he comes on stage.
Good morning. Your Excellency, Dr. Gwen Ramokopa, Treasurer General of the African National Congress, Deputy Minister Obed Bella, Minister Mr. Stavros Nicolaou, Mr. Umaira Moketsi Shonara, dear ambassadors and representatives of BRICS. First of all, it is a great honor to have been invited to participate in this Progressive Business Forum under South Africa's chairmanship of BRICS. So many important and rich points have been raised this morning. The perspectives of BRICS, its GDP dimension, the significant weight of BRICS population in the world, our trade perspective, the BRICS Bank. There are so many themes that I could go on and on talking about it. I was personally the head of the department for the BRICS Business Forum, and I was able to, I remember very clearly of the importance of the deliberations of the report of the 25 companies which is delivered to our 5 leaders.
And it is a unique opportunity to promote the interests and to identify the challenges and interests in terms of both investment and trade. In Brazil, the chairmanship of our companies, which will be represented in the BRICS Business Forum, is our aeronautical company, which is the pride of Brazil in terms of manufacture, both of civil and military aircrafts, Embraer. As I said, I feel so comfortable and eager to express myself over the themes related to this PBF. And the inauguration of the direct flights between Joburg and Cape Town is a fantastic opportunity to stimulate tourism between our countries. This is a first great deliverable. But let me go ahead to address President Lula's vision of BRICS. As you are aware, since President Lula took office in January, Brazil has been restoring our foreign policy principles and traditions which are enshrined in our Constitution. And here I mention those principles such as commitment to multilateralism, to international law, and to the UN Charter, to dialogue and peace among nations and the promotion of sustainable development and justice. To achieve these objectives, Brazil must work together with its partners, especially those of the developing world that face similar challenges and constraints. In this spirit, we are working to deepen our dialogue and cooperation with African countries, which have an enormous potential for trade and investments, and with whom we share historical and cultural ties. And the same applies to Asian and Middle Eastern countries. We are resuming the South-South dimension of our foreign policy. It is our goal to reinforce partnerships with our friends from the Global South. And this was so well expressed by Minister Ramakopa during her speech. Brazil is also fully committed to strengthening its engagement with BRICS, which is an indispensable mechanism for building a multipolar world that reflects the voices and needs of developing countries. There are many challenges that lie before BRICS in this effort. The need for reform of the main institutions of global governance included the United Nations Security Council and the World Trade Organization, in the midst of the accumulation of international crises that mainly affect developing countries. The importance of financial inclusion mechanisms with a view to ensure the expansion of the benefits of the growth economy is absolutely crucial. The necessity that developed countries comply with financial commitments and pledges of assistance to developing countries in an effort to coping with adverse environmental impacts. And here I would like to stress the importance of the NDB and the opportunity to finance with the funds infrastructure projects such as we have mentioned. I mean, the NDB will be able to grant loans at much lower interest rates, and this is effectively something that will favor very much less favorable and regions of the world that are facing constraints and great challenges. With regard to the preparation of the 15th summit of the BRICS, Brazil reinforces its support of the South African presidency and praises the initiative to extend invitations to representatives from various African countries. And Brazil expects the summit to produce concrete results and reaffirms the commitments to strengthening BRICS initiatives, including, as I have already said, the new development banks, the BRICS vaccine research and development centers, and the BRICS integrated early warning system for preventing mass infectious diseases. Ladies and gentlemen, the BRICS Colloquium and Gala Dinner is an important occasion for relevant stakeholders to discuss the opportunities represented by BRICS. And for that, we should all be grateful to the PBF, whose team has done an excellent job in bringing us all here together. I am sure the discussions held here today will result in an exchange of views that will contribute to the efforts of the 15th summit. I wish you all clarity and focus in today's discussions, and may we all continue to work towards a world of equal opportunities for all. Thank you.
Very much. A big thank you again to Ambassador Felix. Let's give you a big round of applause. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to have a short intermission. So it is tea time, and that is prepared for you just downstairs. You'll have the entire station waiting for you right there. But of course, I'll also need to let you know that we're actually live streaming this particular event. So in case you have people that want to join in virtually, they can actually also do that by just checking out the live stream on YouTube. So if you just search for the Progressive Business Forum on YouTube, you should actually be able to find it right there. And the SABC News is actually broadcasting it live, as well as on the actual channel of the Progressive Business Forum right there on YouTube as well. So do indeed do that, and that's where you can find that.
Whereas I thought, because we're trying to catch up on time, should we suggest to everyone 12:30 sharp?
Yes, let's make sure that we do indeed keep it nice and quick. So let's be back again right here, 12:30. The lady has spoken.
Okay, thank you.
just stopping anyone. Yes, definitely. Because you know why? So on points like once a crossing. Okay, but so I don't want us to clash.
Ladies and gentlemen, so instead of tea, we'll actually be having lunch. So we ask that everyone still proceed downstairs, but it will be lunch now instead of tea. And lunch, of course, has already been served. So we'll be back right here at 1 p.m.
Yes. Yes. Asiya lapha yaphambili ngoba bamuphethe lapha kaqedi. Asiya ekhaya.
What's in mind?